Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first Changing Tides discussion here at COVE. My name is Matthew Johnson, and really happy to have four guests with us this afternoon to talk about diversity within ocean technology. And I will introduce our panel. First is Mr. Hector Jacques, who, after graduating from Tons in Nova Scotia, joined Warnock Hershey International Limited in 1967 in the Halifax office, and in 1969 was appointed manager of the Geotechnical Services Division for the Atlantic region. In 1972, Mr. Michael Whitford and Hector formed Jacques Whitford and Associates Limited and offer services in earth sciences discipline Atlantic region. And his bio is significant, and I don't want to
That's good.
But really happy to have you here, Hector. You are, I guess if we were to say a legend in entrepreneurship and here in the region, I think that would be an understatement. So welcome to you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, Captain Jacques Olivier from the Royal Canadian Navy. Captain Olivier joined the Canadian Armed Forces in 1986, graduated from the RMC, Royal Military College of Canada in 1991. And completed initial training in Victoria, BC and Plymouth, England. And he moved to Halifax, where he served at various engineering ashore establishments, operational ships until 2001. Subsequently gained experience in complex procurement program management while serving at NDHQ, National Defence Headquarters in Ottawa, and while on exchange with the Royal Canadian Navy in England. Captain Olivier is a graduate of the Canadian Forces College Joint Command and Staff Program. Holds several postgraduate diplomas, including Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering, and Naval Architecture and Marine Engineering from MIT, and a Master of Business Administration from the University of Ottawa. So welcome to you, Captain Olivier.
Thank you.
Joshua Ah is our intern for the summer, one of several interns here at COVE this summer. Joshua was born in Lagos, Nigeria, moved to Muscat, Oman at the age of 9. And where he's attended school and completed his high school. Moved to Halifax 5 years ago. So a recent arrival here in Halifax to attend Dalhousie University, and has just completed his mechanical engineering undergraduate degree. So welcome, Joshua, and congratulations. Last but not least is Asher Trim Gaskin, and Asher hails from the beautiful island of Barbados. His leadership qualities emerged as a young delegate at the Global Youth Conference as an early teen. Joshua is an avid sportsman representing the island in swimming and rugby, and is a 23-year classical violinist. That's fantastic. 10 of which were spent first violin in the Barbados National Youth Orchestra. In 2017, he graduated with a BSc in biology and certificate in genetics from Dal. And during his time at Dalhousie, he was president of the Caribbean Connection Student Society. To further satisfy his love for development and leadership, Asher leads a youth group, plays violin in the band Church Deepwater, Nova Scotia, Nova Sinaphoria. In 2021 program year, Asher exited and continued his role as program manager with Imhotep Legacy Academy at Dal. Welcome, Asher. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. I want to get right into it because we only have an hour. It's a big topic. I really hope that at the end of the discussion, we're going to take some questions from the audience. So for those who are listening, and if you have questions, feel free to put them in. We would love to hear from you. This is meant to be not just a discussion from us for you to listen, but it's also meant for you to really openly engage with us here on screen. I'd like to start with Captain Olivier. Can you give us talk about your journey in your career now, and how you selected your career path, how you got to where you are, and any hurdles that you didn't quite expect on your path?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Matthew, and thank you for COVE for organizing this event. And good afternoon to the participants, but also my fellow panelists. Thank you again for organizing this. I think now in this current social situation we're in, I think it's fitting and timely that we encourage this type of conversation. And I'm delighted to be given the opportunity to share some of my personal experiences. I have now served for the Canadian Armed Forces, the CAF, for more than 34 years, and same for the RCN. I'm a naval engineer, and I'm currently the director of Digital Navy, responsible for the programmatic aspects of an initiative aimed at increasing the digital and disruptive technologies to evolve the naval enterprise. My journey with the Navy and the military started as a teen growing up in Montreal. I joined the Canadian Cadet Organization, which is essentially a youth development program focusing on life skills such as good citizenship, leadership and friendship, fitness, decision making, and teamwork. And after 4 years as a sea cadet, I was introduced to seamanship, navigation, sailing, and this is where truly I developed an inclination for the ocean and the sea and the Navy. I was also inspired by the cadet instructors cadre that supervised us. You know, they're essentially a reservist for the CAF. So I saw myself in my teens as someone that would be wearing a uniform as an adult based on that experience. So when it came time to choose a career path and a field of study, like many, I considered, many factors, geographic location, proximity to family and my support network, income stability, career longevity, I would say. And these could be themes for this particular conversation, and also the structure and the culture of the organization. I also considered my desire to travel, to explore, and to not be ordinary. So joining the CAF was, or through the Royal Military College was a very attractive option. The plan was to achieve a free post-secondary degree from a reputable academics institution while earning a salary and benefits. The plan was then to graduate, learn, grow, gain experience, and become a subject matter expert in the field, of course, for me, which was marine engineering and naval architecture. My plan was never, my plan was to retire after 20 years. I said to myself, 20 years, that will be good enough, and I can do something else. It's more than 34 years now. So the thing is, as many have realized, is that when you are a member of the CAF and you practice the profession of arms, it's not just a job, it's a vocation. It's very difficult at some time to remove the uniform. And I'm still wearing it right now very proudly. So this is where I am. My career path was very typical. I went from being an apprentice to a journey person to being an engineer in a seagoing high readiness surface ship. Once you've done that post, there's an inflection point in your career because your sea days are gone, and you have to pivot into something else. You have to reinvent yourself and choose almost a second career within, the Navy and DND. In my case, I chose to continue support the material acquisition and support business processes. And this is where I moved from Halifax to Ottawa and became a project manager, program manager, portfolio manager, took on greater responsibilities, greater risk. I did make mistakes. I learned from them. Eventually in the fullness of time was given the opportunity to be a director and an institutional leader. I will pause here and talk about the hurdle. There are many hurdles. I will focus perhaps on one, and although warn about this, the hurdle that I did not expect was mental health. And often we are warned about that, and I've seen it with my peers. I've seen it with definitely with my subordinates and even my chain of command. But eventually, I had to deal with my own mental health. The thing is, as you age, and maybe age is not a factor, but as you go through the trials and tribulations of life, your resilience will diminish. And if you are a visible minority, you will tend to work harder to get the same results often. So you can become addicted to hard work, to working hard. We need to be careful about that, because at some point you need to recognize what I would call, or what people call, the point of diminishing returns, where it doesn't matter how many more times or effort you put in, the outcome will sensibly be the same. When that happens, you need to really refocus on your work-life balance and your work-life integration, as we are now in this COVID-19 pandemic era. It's really integrated. So one has to be mindful of that. That's the hurdle I would like to share, and it's very dear to my heart, because I've seen a lot of hardship with people around me, and even with myself. In closing, as I'm conscious of the time, I would say that my experience with the Navy and the RCN has been very positive and rewarding, and I would encourage everyone to consider this. I'll say that the DND and the CAF, in my personal opinion, is dedicated to being a modern, forward-looking national institution where everyone is welcome, feels safe in the workplace, and are treated with respect and human dignity, and are judged based on their competence, based on their performance, their potential. So I would encourage everyone to really consider that as an option for their career. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Captain Olivier. It's interesting. You mentioned the mental health aspect. I grew up in a military family. My father did 37 years, and probably only recently came to the realization the effects and the toll that took on his mental health. And so I appreciate that you're sharing that. The stresses of that, but more importantly, he too would look back on his career. And I'm the last generation. So my grandfather served, my father served, and now my job is development officer for Aerospace and Defence. I'm not in uniform, but somehow I managed to still stay near to the forces, and I appreciate it. And thank you for your service. So, Hector, I want to pivot a little bit, and your career, is no secret to many. Very successful company. Over 600 employees. Moving into what now is known as Stantec. Networks, and can I back up just for a second and share a little bit? So back when I started my career, I worked at the Black Business Initiative as a regional business development manager, and Hector Jakes was the chair of the board at the time, and I was able to learn a lot from you, specifically around networking, and sort of not just who you know, but who knows you and what they know about you. How it can open doors to customers, funding, and other opportunities. Can you help us understand how you've been able to how you leverage your network and establish networks, and how can visible minorities create stronger networks?
Thanks, Matthew. You're a little bit out of date, my friend. When we sold to Stantec in 2008, we were 1,700 employees, so a little bit bigger than what you think.
Apologies.
Yeah. Yeah. In essence, I guess, I think visible minorities often victimize themselves. okay? And I think as a result of that, they feel that they've got to go beyond and a bit above to prove themselves successful. I guess, for better or for worse, when I came to Canada in 1972, I already came with the first degree, and I got my master's here, and so I never ever felt I was second class, okay? And so when I started Jake's Whitford in 1972 with Michael Whitford, I didn't, a lot of my friends at the time, said, Jakes, you're not going to survive. You didn't grow up here. You don't know everyone around, okay? This is the business that you better know everyone around. You didn't go to school with them. So how are you going to survive? I mean, you don't know anyone. And I said, well, if I don't know anybody, I'll find out. And so 4 years after I started the firm, I joined a well-known business club that was going at the time called Halifax Club. Now, when I joined, I was the first visible minority to be in the club, and probably the only guy with black hair, because everybody else was white. Yeah, so I was not only a visible minority, but I was also one of the youngest members of the club at the time. But I guess, and I think this is important, I think if you set yourself a goal to do a certain thing, and as you pointed out, networking is a vital part of business and entrepreneurial life. I joined the preeminent club at the time. I basically socialized with everyone there, never worrying about the fact that I was the youngest member or that I was a visible minority. I simply said that I was as good as anyone else. Yeah. And so why should I be prepared to take a second seat to anyone else? And I never ever did that. And I guess if there's one bit of advice I could give visible minorities, young and old, okay, is if you have an ambition or goal in life, yeah, go after it. Yeah. Do not accept the fact that you are not as good as anyone else. I mean, as a case in point, in all of my business life, if I was ever discriminated against, hell, I didn't even know it, because I just charged ahead and achieved the goals that I wanted to achieve. And I think, you talk about discrimination amongst visible and minorities and the topics of the day. Discrimination is human failing that goes back to time immemorial. Yeah, there was discrimination during the pharaohs, during the Romans, during all kinds of times. Yeah, and I guess what I simply believe that if you set your mind to do something, you don't really have to. I mean, look at right now as we speak. Yeah, if you watch the news, people are being discriminated against when they go to shop because they got out-of-province plates.
You always find something to discriminate against.
That's right. Discrimination is always going to be there. Yes, we want to stamp it out. We want to stamp out all forms of discrimination, whether it be religious, racial, whatever, But we better understand the fact that it's an ugly human trait that existed 3,000 years before us, or even more, and is going to exist 1,000 years after we're even gone. We'd like to stamp it out, but I think we'll never completely stamp it out.
Thank you very much, sir. It's very, I couldn't agree more. I talk about, my wife is from Newfoundland, a small town in Newfoundland, zero diversity. So they had to fight between Catholics and Protestants. But there was always an opportunity to discriminate against somebody. But I think that it's definitely important to understand that we are forging ahead is some fantastic advice. I want to talk to Asher. I'd like to, Asher, you work at the Imitat Institute at Dal. You work with youth who are already involved in STEM. Parents are supporting them through in that endeavor. Can you educate us a bit about what kinds of careers they're telling you that your participants are interested in, and how we can do a better job of socializing minority youth for STEM careers in the future, specifically in this blue economy as we're talking about today?
Thank you, Matthew. And I will also say good afternoon to everyone, as well as the other panelists that are here joining me as well. With my work with Imhotep's Legacy Academy, most of our participants, their ambitions lead them towards engineering or doctors. We have a few that are interested in nursing, very few interested in tech and veterinary sciences. But to actually socialize them in the ocean tech field, we need to have more conversations such as this, as well as having leaders such as Jacques and Mr. Hector Jacques as well, talking to students, taking that time to actually go meet the students where they are and actually speaking to them, letting them know their paths. But in addition to also speaking to them, inviting them to actually see their workplace, not the usual administrative, mundane work that we do, but actually the hands-on science activities, that hands-on learning that you do in your workplace. I remember a time that we actually visited COVE and we did a simulation of a turbine. And I remember these students, their faces, their reactions, they were so involved in it, and they built some really good turbines before actually going to that field trip and actually engaging with that building a turbine activity. I don't think any of these students actually see themselves or thought that they could build a turbine. But after that, I believe that the interest was beginning to spark. So part of sparking that interest and socializing them in that area is actually going them to where they are and actually speaking to them. Firstly, our persons of visible minorities speaking to those students, but not only persons of visible minorities, other leaders in the same ocean field who might not be a visible minority, but understand that we are facing a challenge and are willing to accept and willing to make that change. Them too actually speaking, telling the story of persons who are visible minorities in addition to their own stories would actually allow the students to see that going into the ocean tech is something that is possible.
Thank you very much, Asher. That's when I was in school, I thought about being a marine biologist, and I found out very quickly that I was probably better at business than I was at being a scientist. So I think that this is where I ended up. And oh, we lost. He's back. Okay, fantastic.
What happened? What happened?
I'm not sure. For those who can't see, we lost Hector there for a minute, but you're back, so I'm not sure. But welcome back, sir. Thank you very much, Asher, for that. And moving forward, we will continue to do that. We want to. I was here when you were here at COVE. Want to continue those type of experiences so that we can broaden the scope from engineering, medicine, dentistry, and really see that there's so many exciting things happening here in oceans that whether it's from systems and sensors, virtual reality, autonomous vehicles, those are really exciting things as well. So I want to move on to, speaking of students, I want to bring Joshua into the conversation. Joshua, in Nova Scotia, the Black community is not very well represented in programs like engineering at Dal. And how did you come to choose that path through? And did you have a mentor? I think would be be one of the questions I like to know, because mentoring, as we all know, is very, very critical to success.
Yeah, thank you very much. At a young age, I really loved math. I really excelled at mathematics at a young age. So anything to do with math, I loved it. So after high school, I was really contemplating choosing between engineering, economics, or music, because those were my three interests at the time. So starting college, I decided to give engineering 2 years. I chose engineering. I decided to do it for 2 years, and I gave myself a deal that after 2 years, if I don't like it, I will switch to a different program. So fast forward 2 years, at Dalhousie after second year, I realized I was really interested in engineering, because it kind of gives you superpowers. You're able to not just be a consumer, but you can also produce yourself, because you learn how to design, you learn how to analyze. So you can kind of move from that consumer to a producer. And we're not talking about entrepreneurship, design skills, critical thinking, and all those kind of things. In terms of mentorship, I think my parents were definitely mentors that I had. I think having mentors at home is very, very key, or at least role models or someone to look up to. My dad studied engineering in university, so I had a direct blueprint to follow as a young person. And my parents were always serious about academics. They supported us, in our extracurricular, like sports and the other things we were involved with, but they were very adamant on exceeding or excelling academically. So I think it starts at home, having a home culture of seriousness and parents who, push you and also support you at the same time, definitely helped me towards, choosing engineering, but also excelling in engineering. Because it's a hard program for anyone, but to get through it, you need a good support system, which thankfully I had growing up and going through the program. So yeah, I enjoyed academics at a young age. I was always competitive with my twin brother. We still compete, not just on the sports field and the soccer field, but also in the classroom as well. We're always looking to see who got the better grade and who did good on this test. So. Just having a family structure that supports you all around, I think helps.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. My parents pushed me a lot, but actually I had grandparents that pushed me a lot too, because I had to live with my grandparents here in Nova Scotia. My father, as I mentioned earlier, my father's in the military growing up, and I didn't want to go to grade 13. So I stayed here in Nova Scotia and graduated here in Nova Scotia and lived with my grandparents, who at 7 o'clock, my grandfather always yelled up the steps. And he was a drill sergeant, had that big voice, and get up, get to school, let's go. You're not living here forever. So
yeah, I also like to mention that I had teachers and professors that also supported me. It always gives a kid a boost when they have teachers that actually believe in them. And I was always fortunate to have that throughout, when I was in Nigeria to when I moved to the Middle East, to Dalhousie. So having teachers who actually want to teach you definitely helps, because there are many obstacles along the way that are very easy to give up.
Absolutely, 100%. I want to go back and talk to Jacques for a minute, Captain Olivier. As we look to the future of the blue economy, and we look for the demand for mature second career workforce, we're working with the Navy here in Nova Scotia. A lot of ex-Navy personnel are working in companies that currently are supporting the National Shipbuilding Strategy, and looking for retirees transitioning to second careers in oceans. One of Navy Captain Rich Gravel is at Thales here in Halifax, as an example. What recruitment opportunities do you see for visible minorities in the Navy? And is there a way that we here at COVE can do a better job of attracting visible minorities to this industry as well?
Thank you. So I'm not a recruiter as such, but I can share quite a bit, and obviously I'm biased, but I will say that it's it's actually a great time to join the Navy and to be in the Navy. We are going through the greatest renewal program since World War II. And we envisage to deliver new ships approximately every 18 months for the next few decades. So you could join the Navy now, and if you're lucky, embark on board a new ship, and 20 years from now, still be observing new ships being delivered, if the plan goes well. So in a sense, I'm very envious of those who can join the Navy and see themselves as a seagoing type of person. There are plenty of paths you can follow, and really I would encourage everyone to go straight to our website, forces.ca, and you will see a banner there with the careers in demand. And I was there yesterday, and there's about 7 of them, with signing bonuses. And this is for new members, but also former members of the CAF or the Navy who wish to re-enroll,
Okay.
So in fact, there's a bit of a push for re-enrollment as well, and I believe there's a signing bonus. But if you want to be a sonar operator, marine technician, naval combat information operator, weapons engineering, marine system engineering officers, these trades and these career paths are currently in demand. I will change the subject a little bit, and this may be a contentious subject, but I will talk about the Employment Equity Act. And under the Employment Equity Act, the CAF has a legal obligation to ensure that its workforce is representative of the Canadian population it serves in terms of values, culture, and the market and the labor market. The employment equity recruiting and retention goals are currently set at 25.1% for women. The Navy is currently at 20.9 in July, 11.8 for members of visible minorities, and the Navy is at 10.8, so very close to the target, and 3.5% for Aboriginal peoples, and we are currently 2.9 for the Navy. And I know that E is often a contentious subject, so I wish to reiterate that it's not just a target or a quota that does not consider standards and merit. To join the Navy and the CAF, you need to meet the standards, and if you want to advance, you'll need to show that you're competent. The advancement in the military is a meritocracy, based on competence and proficiency. So regardless, you'll have to show that you can actually do the job. There's something. We also have the Canadian Armed Forces diversity strategy. This I wish we could share with all the attendants, but in terms of the way we are progressing this platform, it's a fairly exhaustive strategy with a vision, key principles, goals, and initiatives. And one of these goals is to generate a CAF that reflects Canadian diversity. And this is supported by 4 initiatives: improving attraction and recruitment of Canadian, modernize individual training and education, because really often discrimination and this type of behaviors is based on a lack of cultural awareness and training. Integrate professional development, whereby this is taught, at the early stage all the way to senior leadership, and also develop a mentorship program. And I'm very, Joshua, and I think Hector also mentioned mentorship. It's very important. And I find that, if I may just take a tangent here, mentees and mentors tend to find themselves. It's good to have a program. I think it's essential. But in my own experience, I find that there is a natural attraction and mentees will find mentors, and mentors will find mentees. Just my personal opinion. My being here talking to you is part of this diversity strategy, whereby I am, you know, as an institutional leader, I take pleasure to be here and speak for the CAF and the Navy. There are also a few other programs for the Navy, and I apologize, but I may place them in the chat. But there's a few things I wish to share with you. One of them is the post-secondary co-op internship program, and I'll put the links in the chat. And essentially, if you're a student, you can talk to your co-op coordinator and find a job in the government. There's something called the Federal Student Work Experience Program. Same thing, similar, you know, and essentially you can enter the government and the Navy. Closer to this conversation, we have something called the D&D, Material Acquisition and Support Officer Development Program. And if you have graduated, you can apply and enter 5 streams. One of which, so there's purchasing and support and supply, engineering and science support, electronics and technical inspector. I know many people who went through these programs, and I was talking to one of them yesterday, and I smiled when Hector mentioned that he was the only one with black hair, because I was talking to a young person in that program, and she mentioned to me that to be a youth, you're almost a visible minority in some of the organization.
Couldn't agree more.
And so that it's very true. And this speaks to succession planning, you know, and the fact that we have to make sure that we generate, you know, a workforce that will be representative of the mosaic of the Canadian population. We also have a few resources for COVE, including our Defense Visible Minority Advisory Group. I can give you the contact info for that. And we have in place leadership that take care of the aspect of visible minority, the Director of Human Rights and Diversity, and the Director of Workforce Programs and Services for the military and the civilian workforce, respectively. I will pause there and say that there's a healthy program to attract, you know, recruit and retain people, the right people for the RCN and the Navy. And I look forward to share the links and the contacts with COVE so that we can continue this dialogue and an action plan if that may be the case. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Captain Olivier. That's some fantastic information, and I will. I've taken some notes, so I'll get back to you, and so hopefully we can get that out to all the listeners. You know, about the Employment Equity Act, the one thing that I didn't want to go unnoticed today with respect to diversity in this industry is that we do not have any women on this panel today. And it's not without trying. We did reach out to a couple people that were one was not available, and the other one we were unable to. I don't think we had the right contact, but still challenges within gender diversity as well. And perhaps we'll save that for another day, but I didn't want to go through the whole session today and not address the fact that you know, even our panel is diverse, but it's not as diverse as it probably should be. Hector, if I can come back to you for a second. In minority communities, you tend to see youth gravitating towards pathways that are more social in nature. So as an African Nova Scotian and an Indigenous male, I always saw some of my colleagues and my family members going to social work, psychology, law, and trying to take on burdens of solving some of the community's issues, where you can have just as much or even more impact by starting a business and employing 50, 100, 1,700 people, and gaining influence and power. How can we do a better job? And this is a good segue, by the way, to thank our partner today, which is the Black Business Initiative, in doing a better job in socializing youth from minority communities into the range of careers like yourself.
Matthew, I really think it's a case of early childhood education, okay? And I think it's education and the early childhood that you grew up in. I mean, I listened to Joshua and I listened to Jacques, and I mean, a lot of what they're doing now starts when they were young boys, young men, I mean, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and so, I always wanted to be boss, I mean, and so I figured the only way that I could be boss is if I ran my own show. So I basically worked for WH, which was a branch of S&C, for 4.5 years. They were badly run then, and I turned around and said in 72, I had enough of this and I'm going to leave. So I think a lot of it stems from what your early education and childhood development is. And I think the more we can bring minorities and African Canadians into the entrepreneurial life and to get them more exposed to that, and so that they can understand what the freedom is when you're your own boss, then I think you'll see more of that. But I just want to share, just before I end, I want to share with you a small true story that I incurred in 1980 or so. The Prime Minister of the day was the father of the current PM, and he had just got an employment equity bill passed in the House, that basically said if you employed more than 100 folks and you wanted to do any work for the federal government, then you got to show that you have a plan to employ women and minorities to advance them in the workforce, you see. And we were by then over 100 employees, so I gladly said, yes, we'll agree to that, and we signed the plan. So I then got a call from a federal bureaucrat from what was then called Employment and Immigration, and they turned around to me and says, well, sir, do you have any women in the workforce? And I said, yes, I do. We just hired a whole bunch of women engineers. And I said, well, we've hired 11 this year, and the women are getting paid the same as the men. And based on the starting wage and where they go from there is on their own merit. He said, well, that's good. And then he turned around, Matthew, and you'll get a charge out of this. He says, do you have any non-whites in the firm? And I said, yes. And of course, I was thinking about me. And he says, how do you pay the non-whites? Do you pay the non-whites the same as the whites? And I said, no. And then he turned around to me and says, why do you pay them less? I said, I didn't say that. And this went on a couple of times, because he assumed, here was the auditor in his preconceived mind, that the whites should get paid more than the people of color. And I was saying, yes, we had some non-whites in the firm, and they effectively got paid more. That was me. And so here was a built-in bias of the auditor who was supposed to check to ensure that we treated people of color equally as those who are white, but he himself came in with a preconceived notion that people of color should get paid less. So that is the sort of issues that people of color often face.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And in 2015, the Marine People Partnership here at COVE, which is, and Dr. Sherry Scully is the author of that, really kind of addressed exactly that, Hector, is that, you know, companies looking to ask when their workforce isn't diverse. The term she used was tend to hire the familiar, which, you know, in my mind, I just heard bias, or I heard just pure racism, systemic racism in that term. But that is that the bias is definitely prevalent, and you know, we have to consciously and continually push to make this change. We have about 15 minutes, a couple questions, and I do want to get to some questions because there's some very good comments and questions coming on the side. So I want to come back to Josh. You know, early years, establishing expectations for young people. You had mentioned that, you know, support from your family. Is there anything that you would like to have seen in school that may have shaped your views or your ambitions earlier on? I know that you kind of addressed it a little bit, saying, you know, you had some fantastic teachers, some fantastic professors. Was that something that you gravitated towards, or was it, did you see any opportunities for change within schooling?
Yeah, thank you. In school, especially in high school, which I think is one of the most important phases of anyone's life, I don't really have enough experience with extracurricular activities that were engineering related, such as robotics teams and, you know, machine shop training and craft making and CAD software. I realized that a lot of my peers in university engineering had that experience in high school. And then it got me thinking that we all really didn't start engineering on the same skill level set. Some people had years and years of experience, you know, working in the military or in the Navy. Some people had years of experience in high school doing robotics after school. So I think that's something I was probably missing going into university. It just so happened to be that my high school in the Middle East didn't offer those things at the time. So looking back now, I think those are some of the things I wish I had in school. Yeah, so, you know, coming out of high school and knowing and understanding some of the terminology before you start your coursework in university, because in university they actually assume when you start engineering that you know a lot of these things. They don't really have time to explain the fundamentals of the fundamentals. You know, they start right away. So knowing those things before going to university would have definitely helped. Another thing that's, you know, outside the technical field that would have helped, you know, me personally was reading. I think reading, you know, advancing your reading skills is definitely important for any industry. But knowing how to read well, critically think, analyze reading would have been a definitely like good skill to have going into engineering. And I brought a few books that I want to recommend for anybody who's watching, who's young or not young, that I'm reading right now that have kind of helped me, you know, navigate life at the moment. One is 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. It's a great book. Yeah, it's helped me a lot, changed my views on a lot of things, and yeah, I'm still reading it. I don't want to finish it. And another one is by Thomas Sowell. It's called Discrimination and Disparities by Thomas Sowell. This book makes you laugh, makes you cry, makes you do everything. Another book I want to recommend is, I don't have it here, but it's called Dear Ijewale, or A Feminist Manifesto in 15 Suggestions. It's by a Nigerian author called Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. It's another book that I read that completely changed my view on a lot of things. So yeah, those three books I definitely recommend for whoever is watching and wants to improve their thinking, and just, you know, they're also good pleasure reading books in general. So yeah, I should probably end on that.
Great, thank you very much. I couldn't agree with you more. You know, you try to, you know, constantly and continually learn and upgrade your skills as you go along. I think that it's Dr. Stephen Covey is continually sharpen the saw, I guess, and that was kind of the popular business book back when I was much younger. Asher, we have about 10 minutes. I don't want to rush your answer, but I do want to get to the question. You know, and going back to what Josh said, you know, about the importance of having, you know, your parents push you there, having families, mentors, you know, pushing kids into a pathway, but not necessarily pushing into something that fits their own ideals. Improvement and motivation. What advice, if they're, for parents who are listening, like myself, my son is going to NSCC in the fall, and I couldn't be more excited. I wish it weren't a pandemic so he could actually go to campus. But he is going, and I'm very proud of him. What advice do you have for parents for balancing the, you know, your goals and aspirations that you have for your kids and their desire to carve their own path?
Okay. Well, I will kind of speak from my own example as well as the example of the other panelists as well. And I will say that there are multiple routes to achieving any goal that you desire. But I believe that with parents and children, there needs to be that relationship. And when I say that relationship, I mean a good relationship of listening, watching, and actually dialoguing with your child. So for instance, you may have a desire of, okay, I think that you should do A, B, C to get to D. But he may say, okay, but I like B, I like C. I don't necessarily like A. Can we do E? And I really think that that conversation is really important, not just you telling the student, telling your child, hey, you must do this, 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 because at the end of the day, it's still their life as well. And a child is able to identify or know when a parent is for them. He knows a good parent. He knows when they're there for support. And everyone mentioned that they had that support from their parents when they were in the early childhood. Same for me. I had that same support, even though I necessarily didn't want to continue violin. My mom said, hey, the reason why I have you in violin is because I know later on in life, when your friends don't have an instrument, at least you'll have an instrument to play. When you're lonely, you're able to pick up that instrument and then begin playing. And as I grew older, my love for it increased and grew as well. But I also saw what she was saying, what my mother was saying with, okay, there were times when I was lonely, I was like, okay, I just pick up my instrument. I actually had that joy. So because we really had that conversation with my mother and my father, I was really able to understand their point of view and why they were telling me to go in a certain path. So I say having that dialogue with your child, and then once you're seeing them, seeing their actions, you can see when when your child is excited for a specific area, they go about it in the best way they know how to. And then once you're able to see that and you're actually having that conversation with your child, then it's up to you as a parent to begin to support them in that aspect, in what they actually want to grow in. And support doesn't necessarily also mean just giving them, but being there with them. Because as my mom even said, she was there with all my violin lessons. She even began to say, I could have learned violin with you. So I'd say, listen, watch, support, have that dialogue with your children, and you'll be good.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's fantastic advice, and I'll take that home with me tonight. I want to be cognizant of time. We technically have 6 minutes, and I hope that everybody can have a couple extra minutes. I do apologize in advance. This is officially my second panel, but only my first panel doing online, and I got lost track and really wanted to give everybody all the time they needed to answer the question. So there's a couple pieces coming down the board here, and Daniel Silver, I just want to get to your note. Says, please encourage all youth and interested mentors to look at the Acadia robotics competitions. Imhotep have had a number of our great teams over the years. We'd love to see more teams from minority groups and more minorities on school and community teams. So robotics.acadiau.ca/robotics. So if anybody can have a look at that. A question from Rustam Southwell, and Russ, who is no stranger to, I don't think most people on this either listening or definitely not on the panel, is the current interim CEO for the Black Business Initiative here in Halifax, the founding executive director, and I will stop there. And his question is, how do we promote the science and technology sector to get more Black youth involved in potentially high-wage careers? And I'll toss that out to anybody who wants to go first.
Matthew, it
Yes, sir.
starts with education. Education, education, education. Yeah. I mean, the better you can educate our young kids and give them, gosh, I mean, when my kids were young, okay, my 7-year-old daughter came home and said, Dad, how do we earn a living? Because I know you don't work for the city. I know you don't work for the province, and I don't think you work for the feds. So how do we live and eat? Yeah, because in her class, she was told there were 3 types of jobs. You work for the federal government, the province, or the municipality. The option about starting your own business and being in the private sector, it appears, escaped that teacher. So I guess my point is, there's nothing like a terrific education for a child. And I think if we can improve the educational performance of all young kids, and if you look at what's going on in the U.S., I mean, a lot of the African American kids are not doing well in some schools because this education system in some of the schools that they're going to is not doing very, very well. And so I think if we want to get more, we improve the education, but we also turn around and impress more on the parents to help the young kids to move into science and tech.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, just to follow up on what you said, I also think it's culture, you know, there's some things that some cultures value more than others, you know, if we, you know, do we put as much energy into sports and athletics as we do into, you know, spending time after school doing assignments or doing robotics, you know, there's some things some cultures value more than others. So I think that's where the problem is. I think we can put up programs, we can start programs, we can invest money, but I think at the end of the day, I think if your culture doesn't value certain things, it may not work.
Thank you, Joshua. I would just like to add that there's it's diversity and inclusion, and to me, the youth have to see themselves in that organization. It's not just to have 25% of minority. There has to be we have to be visible at all levels, you know, so that we can attract, recruit, and retain. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And actually, that absolutely echoes a comment Amanda Sparks has put there for us. And it says, you cannot be what you cannot see. And I think that's kind of exactly what you're getting at there, Jacques, is that when I was at BBI, and it still exists now, they have mentors on the road. They do businesses jamming, trying to continue to show youth and demonstrate to youth the different career paths, and I'm very thankful to work in this industry. We do have challenges. There are things that we need to do. That's why we're talking today. We're going to continue to talk over the next few weeks. I'm going to take one more question, specifically for you, Hector. It says, in your many years of operating consultancy businesses, how important were internship and co-op programs to helping you recruit new staff?
Very important. In fact, when I was on the board of the Technical University of Nova Scotia, it's now called DAL, I pushed to have DAL go co-op because we were hiring students from Waterloo, and we were hiring students from DAL, or tons as it was then. And the difference between co-op education and the non-co-op students were night and day, you know. And so I pushed university here to go co-op. And in fact, if the Technical University of Nova Scotia went co-op, At the time it did. You can thank me for it, because I said to the president of the day, either you're going to remain president or I'm going to be off the board, but we are going to have co-op students here, and we did. So, and he still stayed president. Yeah. So my point is, there's nothing like co-op education. It does two fundamental things, Matthew. And one is if it's a non-co-op, co-op students come all year round. And so the employer can basically designate certain jobs for co-op students. And we at Jake's Whitford designated 24 full-time positions for co-op students. Yeah. So we were getting co-op. Whereas if it's a non-co-op case, okay, then the students come only during the summertime, and the employer gives them all the crappy jobs to do. Clean up the old filing cabinets, do this, do that. So what does the student learn? Not very, very much. What does the employer gain? Not very, very much. And so if all of the universities went co-op, it is a far better way to integrate the young students while they're still going through their education, that gives the employer an opportunity to decide whether or not they want to hire them as soon as they come out, and also gives a better education for the student as well. I mean, we basically hired most of our students a year before they graduated.
And Josh was in the program this year, are working here at COVE as an intern. I didn't go through a co-op program. I wish I had, but I think it's a longer path, so I definitely agree with you. I do want to be cognizant, appreciate people's time. We have gone over a few minutes. We want to be able to continue this conversation, want to be able to continue the dialogue. Perhaps we'll have a part two. I know that the next month's conversation will happen as well on a different aspect of diversity within oceans. Asher, Joshua, Jacques, and Hector, thank you so much for your time. You've been more than generous. I do appreciate your coming on, and I will share some of the questions as well, hopefully, and then we can direct some questions through to the COVE website. So thank you again, gentlemen, and appreciate it, and have a great day.
Well, just before we end, Matthew, on behalf of our panel, I would like to say you did a terrific job, and thank you for being such a great coordinator of the event, and look forward to seeing you again in the not-too-distant future. Thanks again to all of my fellow panel members.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Likewise. Thank you very much, Hector.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks again, folks.